What is up, guys? James Martin here, and today I have the team and crew for the latest short film, The Seven Deadly Fists of White Lotus. We have the team here. We have Jaya, we have Yendi, and we have director Cameron. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having us.
I want to know, how did this movie come to be? How did you guys meet up? Please tell me about that story.
So the two movies we based this off are both Shaw Brothers movies, Clan of the White Lotus and Executioners from Shaolin. I was really into Kung Fu movies. All I was watching, all I was doing was just Shaw Brothers movies. What if this character was done again in 2021? It was at the time, or 2022. It started off as a what if, but then it really turned into an actual idea for a story. Honestly, the Dragon Lords were the first people I thought of. And I'd spoken to Jaya for a while. We were messaging back and forth. I had thrown out the idea previously, like, would you be willing to work with me? Because I've got some scripts, I've got some ideas for films. Would you be willing to do some choreography? And he was basically like, yeah, man, I'd be willing to do that one day. I thought, why not reach out with this idea? One thing led to another. I wrote the script. I sent it to him, and I didn't know if he was going to read it because he must be so busy. The fact that Jaya, Yenbi, and Kobe Ching Noon, who killed it in his role as Peng Manding, the fact that they took it so seriously and wanted to make this thing actually a film that can be watched and viewed by people, it really means the world to me. The whole process itself was amazing. You know, it was hard work. It was a grind for sure. It was 100% worth it in the end, and I would do it all over again.
In high school, me and my friends would always talk about making a fight scene, like a short film fight scene, by the end of the summer, and then it would just never happen. By 2019, which was the end of my first year, I just rolled with that mentality. I'm like, I just have to do it. Like, no more planning, no more talking, like no more hyping. It's just like, I'm getting the people and we're going to find somewhere and we're going to shoot. And that was it. And that was Battle of the Masters. And that's how the whole team started. And here we are 3 years later, still doing what we do.
Fantastic advice. So tell me a bit about your backgrounds for both of you guys. So how did you get into what you're doing right now? Just tell me briefly about how did you get into being the director and having your stunt team.
I've always wanted to do something related to film or acting ever since when I was a kid. So in elementary school, I would really enjoy drama class, right? Just getting to perform and like just be really like out there. That's kind of my personality, is that like I'm really naturally, I'm loud, I talk a lot, sometimes too much, but I just want to get myself out there. So in elementary school, I really enjoyed drama class. And then when high school rolled around, so we had 3 arts, but we only had 2 things we could choose in grade 9, right? So it was music, visual arts, and drama. So I took drama and visual arts, right? And then I really enjoyed both. So throughout the entire high school, I stuck with visual arts and drama all 4 years. And then, so you can kind of see how that relates to filmmaking, because the visual arts really helped me learn like framing and stuff. And then the drama obviously made me feel really comfortable in front of a camera. And then so as high school progressed and as I watched more and more martial arts movies and I trained more, I realized that like, dude, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to do anything else but martial arts and filmmaking, and maybe sometimes even martial arts filmmaking. University came around, I stuck with a film and media program, began focusing more on the technical stuff, like the production side, like camera, cinematography, lighting, sound, etc., editing and stuff like that. I decided to just make a Kung Fu movie because, you know, we should just do it, right? And then so I got my closest friends, my closest martial arts friend. They were really cool with me making a short film with them. And then so by the end of Battle of the Masters, we were really happy with what we came up with. And then so we said to ourselves, we're like, okay, if we can make this happen, like what's stopping us from doing more of this in the future, right? And that's kind of how the team started. We started calling ourselves the Dragon Lords. We just kind of stuck together and did what we did, like martial arts filmmaking, because that's what we were passionate about. And every year, so like the more we do it, the more committed we became, because you shoot 1 or 2 films and you think like, well, I've shot 2 already, like now I can't stop, right? Like the people are watching, there's people enjoying our work, we can't stop, we just got to keep going. And that's basically how me start and the whole team, that's how we really started this whole martial arts filmmaking thing.
I've always been artistically inclined since the time I was a kid. I've always liked music. I grew up with Beatles, with classic rock, with eventually the blues, and I'm also actually a blues musician. In high school, really, there wasn't much room for creativity, you know, and that was the time where I was really digging my heels into becoming a musician, and I briefly considered being a filmmaker. I took a digital media course. I really liked that. That's where I learned like the basics of editing, of framing a camera. Really self-taught. I'm self-taught as a musician, a singer, as a songwriter, as a screenwriter and filmmaker. Mostly my process has just been putting myself in the lion's den and just learning how it works. I was just constantly watching films, and especially Kung Fu movies. I think it was because I've always been into like the Wu-Tang Clan. Because of that, I really got into the Shaw Brothers, Joseph Kuo, Bruce Lee, Golden Harvest, Jackie Chan, Jimmy Wang Yu, all the old wuxia movies, Lo Lie. And then it eventually became, maybe I can make a career out of this. Maybe I can, if I work hard enough, if I perfect my craft. And it was definitely a grind, but no matter what condition you're in, it's like, all right, what would KAR-LEUNG do? You know? And yeah, and I just imagined him saying like, all right, come on, you got to make this thing. You've got to film this. You're here to make a film.
One of the biggest things that pushed us was actually KAR-LEUNG's spirit. I think a big part of how we managed to get the production done was that every day when we would run into hardship or like really rough days where we just don't really want to do anything, we just think like, come on, like we're not doing this just for ourselves. Like a big part of it is for ourselves, but we're also doing it for KAR-LEUNG and everyone that came before us. So Gordon Liu, all the legends that came before us, we're doing it for them as well. Because it's sad that over the years, they've kind of fallen out of relevance, right? Not a lot of people talk about them anymore. And that's just because, well, we live in the West where Kung Fu isn't even that big in the first place. But even in China nowadays, true martial arts and true Chinese Kung Fu is dying. The young people don't really appreciate it as much as they did before. So I think in a way we are also doing it for them because we're trying to bring it back. We're trying to make it relevant and we're trying to get younger people hyped on martial arts again. And we're trying to bring more awareness to this art form of like putting real martial arts in front of a camera and like showing how people will go at it with the most authentic martial arts as we can, not like the wires or CGI we see today mostly.
How do you make a martial arts film? What's the process in doing that?
There's different approaches to it. So I can't speak for everyone, but I'll tell you about how we approach it or how I used to: action first and then story later, right? I would always think in terms of action, choreography, the fight progression, etc. Right, so I wouldn't really come up with the script most of the time. One of my older videos, Deadly Shapes of Shaolin, the story, the dialogue came way after the choreography, right? All we did on day one was we found somewhere and we're like, okay, let's just start choreographing. So we start shooting the fight, and as the fight starts progressing, we think to ourselves, okay, what are our characters, right? And then through thinking about our characters, we're like, okay, so we have our characters. This is how they fight. Now, what's their story? Why are they fighting? So it's kind of a backwards way of working, I guess. For most people, it's like you come up with an idea, characters, and you write a script, and then you would plan out the shots and everything. But we do it the opposite. We get the shots first, we plan out the choreography, and then we kind of work backwards and think about our character and then how our characters would interact and what their stories are. And then 2021 for Invincible Tiger and Crane, that was the first time I actually wrote like a legit script for a fight scene I was going to shoot. So we thought about the characters and we thought about their stories and we thought about the premise of the entire film, and then we choreographed accordingly to that. But in terms of the actual process, right? So once you have your characters, you have your story. When it comes to choreography, it's really just you need to be with somebody. And you guys just have to brainstorm, right? You need to start touching hands, basically, right? And then you feel it. You start feeling, you touch hands, you're like, okay, if I do this and you do that, how would that feel like? Would it be natural? Would it look good? How our movements relate to one another? Things like that. And it's a lot of trial and error, right? Because like Cameron said, he was self-taught in music mostly, and basically everything else. I'm also self-taught in just about everything because my film program was actually more theoretical than technical. So a lot of the camera stuff I actually learned through YouTube and reading things online. And when it comes to martial arts filmmaking, choreography wise, like there's really no where you can learn that stuff today in Canada, right? Like there's no like fight choreography class, not like KAR-LEUNG old school shapes class, right? Like that thing you never see that anywhere basically. So that was just from watching Kung Fu movies. It's a lot of trial and error. So Battle of the Masters was really rough just because it was our first time. And it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of blanking out on the spot, basically, right? We get there, we're just like, what do we do? Like, how do we make things connect? And how do we make things look good when they connect, right? And then you watch more movies, you train more. and then you shoot more, and then it just slowly comes to you more and more naturally. So Seven Deadly Fists of White Lotus, that one was actually relatively smooth. Despite, a lot of the obstacles we ran into, the entire process was still relatively smooth compared to other films, just because when we shot that was the most experience I've had, because it's been 3 years for me doing it, 3 years of studying KAR-LEUNG, and just 3 years of shooting fight scenes, and obviously training. So for White Lotus, like a lot of experience and knowledge that I learned from the past was able to help us through with the production, so it made it a lot faster. But I honestly think just the process of making a martial arts fight scene is really hard to save, because different people work differently. So I would just have to say, like, a lot of trial and error, a lot of screen testing, a lot of just touching hands and brainstorming, and just kind of figure it out as you go, right? And like, it doesn't sound professional at all when I say that, but that's just the truth of it, right? Because there's no written way, there's no one method of approaching martial arts filmmaking. It's just, you have to kind of trial and error all the way through, and whatever you learn through that first experience, you carry it with you, and then you keep just building that experience, and then it becomes easier over time. But definitely, it's not easy. It's a pain.
Now we're approaching more of like the character, what style they do. So it's not just like random moves thrown together. Like, we actually have to study, like, for example, White Lotus.
Yeah, so we had to study for White Lotus, like Yi's character, right? Humanding, he's a Hongkun practitioner. So most, if not all, his movements are Tiger Claw, right? Because Hongkun Tiger and Crane, right? So we have to think in terms of that. And for White Lotus, we're able to have more liberties with White Lotus, because in the movie, right, we're not trying to use the actual style of Bak Mei. I'm not trained in that, so I have no qualifications in choreographing Bak Mei, that style, right? So, but then we watched Executioners and Clan of the White Lotus, and then we realized, like, Lo Lia, who played the original White Lotus, he didn't really use Bak Mei either. It was just a lot of like kung fu shapes. So we had more creativity with White Lotus, but then obviously we still had to kind of confine it within the era. So it's like, oh, we can't just throw like a tricking move. We can't just throw like a cork or a backflip, because White Lotus wouldn't really do that in that context. But going back to what she said, right? Like, it's when we think more in terms of characters and story, we need to also pay attention to historical details and styles.
If you're not a martial artist but you want to make these films, find people who know their crap. Right? Find people who know the style that you're looking for and are truly devoted to it. People who are really into the old school shape stuff, like Mystery of Chess Boxing and
Seven Grandmasters.
How do you approach making the movie and trying to put in the choreography? So specifically for the Seven Deadly Fists. So did you create the fight first and then the story? Or you mentioned Cameron's story, you brought up the script. So was it script and then, okay, let's look for action elements? So how did you approach that?
It was definitely script first for Seven Deadly Fists. So this one, because like Cameron said, he approached me with the script first, and then there were stage directions for the fight, but it wasn't written down to every single detail, right? It would just be like, fight, White Lotus hits Homanding, and then a bit of dialogue, just like talking smack. And then it would just be like, they fight again, and then it break off because of whatever. So it's not like every single small detail written in the script. It was just progression, like who hits who, and then what they say after, and then stuff like that. But it was definitely story first for White Lotus. And then so we look at the story, we get familiar with the characters in the story, and we try to figure out how they would behave, right? Behave and fight, exactly. And skill level as well, of course. That's one thing to pay attention to, because and this is like a small detail, but for example, in the very opening, very beginning, when Homanding was fighting White Lotus, right? White Lotus wasn't even using two hands. He was just using one hand, and it was just mostly dodging, right? Because it was effortless for him, once again, right? Skill level, because of the characters. And then as Homanding started going more at him, then it was two hands. But then as soon as White Lotus started using two hands, it was basically game over for Homanding for like the rest of the fight, until he started incorporating Crane into the movement.
So what were some of the biggest challenges in making this movie?
The costume was kind of challenging, I would say.
It was like a minor setback, because we ordered the costume a little too close to the beginning of the production. So the wig and the beard actually came in like 2 or 3 days late. Yeah, honestly, costuming was probably one of the hardest parts for costume and makeup for this one, because White Lotus was actually the first film we actually had like actual costuming and makeup, right? In the previous films, it was just kind of what we have in the wardrobe, right? Because I have some Chinese robes and garments I already have, and then so we kind of just like mix and match them for our previous short films. But for White Lotus, because it's such a distinct look, it's such an iconic look, like you can't really kind of half-ass it. Like you have to get it down right, or as right as possible. So for this one, hair, makeup, and costume is definitely a lot more challenging. But besides that, I have to say it was relatively smooth. Like as soon as we have the costumes figured out and everything just kind of fell into place. Right? Like I said, choreography on that one was a lot easier just because of the experience.
We did pretty good with that, I would say.
I think so. I think for a small budget production, we nailed the look pretty darn well. Special thanks to her sister, of course, helping us out with the wig and the makeup. And actually her as well for helping us with the costume.
Well, what's interesting is, so it's funny that you said that of all the challenges, it was basically the costumes and basically the overall production design was your biggest challenge. Because again, as someone that has no experience in martial arts whatsoever, and as someone who's a bit of a natural pessimist, I look at a martial arts film and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, the insurance and people have to play safe, and just like, oh please guys, like when you're fighting, don't actually punch each other in the eye, otherwise we could get sued or blah blah blah. You're looking at these fight scenes, and when you're looking at the movies, is there sort of any safety issues that you're thinking about? What's the general approach with that?
We're just a group of friends.
We're just a group of friends, but it's not as reckless as it seemed actually, because safety is always a concern for us. Not because like we are afraid to get hurt, but it's because if we do get hurt, it's going to set back the production by a lot. So that's why we're safe, right? When it comes to hitting, like I'll be real with you. Like when it comes to hitting, like we're hitting.
We're actually
hitting. Like
for that show.
Yeah. So we're actually
in the middle of another production.
Oh,
I got a bunch of bruises, and then on my nose as well.
My back.
Got punched in the nose.
No. I just scraped. It was a scrape.
True, yeah.
It was a scrape. But yeah, you know, like getting punched in the nose, getting bruises. I used to get a lot of bruises on my forearms just because I've been doing it for longer. Like my forearms kind of got used to it.
We actually hit.
Because like,
but we have control. That's the thing. Like we know what we're doing, so
we're hitting for real.
Yeah.
But then we're not hitting to the point where like we're going past where the other person is. So if one person's blocking, we just hit like boom right there. So the impact is real because we want to show the real stuff. When it comes to getting punched in the chest, like we try to hold back, so it's not like boom punch all the way through, but it's still like a you know,
there's contact.
There's definitely contact, except for the faces. For the face, we try to cheat it out, but there are some close-up or slow-mo shots where there's powder. Then it's just like, screw it, kick me in the face, and just I'll take it. But then when it comes to falls, right, we always think about safety. So most of the time, there's always padding. Like depending on what fall it is, we always put padding on the part where it's gonna get impacted the most. And then, so for example, when in White Lotus, when Eat went flying, you couldn't see it in the shot, but there was like a very thin yoga mat, so he wasn't just falling on like dirt and twigs and everything. And then for other productions like High Master or basically anything else, right? Like when it comes to big falls, like because High Master was shot in a parking garage, so it was concrete, right? So couldn't take a chance falling like on concrete for real. So we had some puzzle mats just laid out for like the falls and the rolls and stuff. But yeah, when it comes to safety, we're obviously trying our best to be safe. But you know, everybody that we work with, they're cool with getting hurt because they know what they signed up for. And I think that's like the most important part, right? And I'm really thankful for, right? Because I wouldn't mind getting punched in the face or like getting kicked in the head or like, you know, anything. And they don't either, right? But then just because we're cool with getting hit doesn't mean we're going to hurt each other on purpose, right? We still try to hold back. We try to not, but if it happens, we're not going to get sued, hopefully, because we're all friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely a level of trust, but then and that's why it's very important when it comes to martial arts filmmaking that you have your own team, right? Because Jackie Chan's stunt team, for example, they know everything about one another. Timing, rhythm, skill set, speed, whatever. And they're all cool with getting hurt, right? So I think it's very important to establish like that bond, like a team that you're comfortable and familiar to work with, so that you're not always worried about, oh, I don't want to hurt this person.
Like, it's not like we're signing a contract here, like, oh, I want to join the Dragon Lords, but this. No, we're just friends that trust each other.
Yeah.
Hiring people who know their stuff, who you trust, you know they're cool, they're to be trusted, they're good people, like the Dragon Lords obviously are, each and every one of them. Felt like I was in good hands. Good portion of White Lotus just came from just straight up social networking. I found the Dragon Lords through a mutual friend. I was just straight up asking like, yo, I want to make a Kung Fu film, but I don't know Kung Fu and nobody around me knows real Kung Fu. What do I do?
Yeah, I gotta say we're very lucky to work with Cameron as well, because he's someone who actually trusts what we do, because there's nothing more frustrating in my opinion when it comes to martial arts filmmaking is working with a director or someone who's trying to always tell us what to do, because it's like, come on, like, we know what we're doing, but you need to trust that we know what we're doing. When it comes to martial arts filmmaking and when it comes to the choreography, like it's impossible to get everybody's idea in. So it becomes really frustrating when there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and when the director or someone that we're working with always just tells us like, no, I want it like this, or I want it like that, or stuff like that. But Cameron, we're lucky enough to have Cameron who trusted us in our abilities 100%. So he was just able to let us do our thing completely, right? And of course he would give us pointers like here and there, like, oh, can you do this and that instead? But it wasn't like he was micromanaging every single move we were doing. And so we're really lucky to have that, because like what he said, right, it's just really comes down to the right people, right? We have the person who is willing to write a script, who's willing to bring back this genre, working with people who are like us, who are willing and who know how to choreograph things of that era. And then so when that comes together, we create something really amazing. Like White Lotus.
All of the hard work really paid off, and I feel like so grateful for all of the fans who watched this and have given us all of this great feedback. Like, it means the world. Again, for somebody who hadn't directed a film before, really to see all this feedback, like everybody's like, yo, are you guys gonna make a sequel? Are you guys gonna do this and this and that? Like, my brothers are like, okay, like, you should make a sequel, and like giving me all these ideas. And then there's like, people are just like hyped on it and saying like, you guys really made something that's really dope. If anything comes out of this, honestly, like, the original movies deserve like the attention they deserve. So like, go out and watch them, you'll love them. Yeah, let's keep this thing alive, because real Kung Fu.
This is something worth preserving. That's why we're doing everything we can to preserve it.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, what a great way to end this video call. So again, thank you guys so much. To everyone else that's watching, I'm going to have their social media links and YouTube channel down in the description. Please go check out their latest short film and go subscribe to their channel. They absolutely earn it. So again, thank you so much to these wonderful legends, and to you guys, take it easy and good luck on your next film. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure to talk, and we're always down to talk more about martial arts filmmaking anytime. Just hit us up.